probably your greatest challenge in teaching intensity is going to be with the long note values. How do we approach the whole notes? How do we make sure that the students aren't rushing on the whole notes? How do we play them with good phrasing? So in this video, I'm going to talk about how I approach that and sort of the staging that I do with the technique to make sure that my students have the technique to sound good on the whole notes. If we look at the opening phrase, we have a statement of the A theme. We have this A theme marcato rhythm, and then we have a whole note on beat 4 in the first violins and violas. Second violins have this broken down into 2 half notes, but later on they do have slurs, and this rhythm's different here too. So we got to get our students thinking about a few things. First of all, how much bow do we need to play this whole note? Well, that kind of depends on the student's ability to put weight down on the string. If they're not good at putting weight down on the string and they're not good at getting that horizontal shearing force, then they're gonna need to use more bow. Also, if the students aren't able to create friction on the string because the bows are slipping, then again, they're going to need to use more bow to compensate. So we have to have our students know how to grip the string. And when I say grip the string, I mean that the bow hair grips the string, not that the students grip the bow and use a lot of tension in the right hand. In fact, we want to get rid of the tension in the right hand. And because we want the intensity to be in our sound, not in our hold on the bow. The way I like to do this to encourage relaxation and to encourage flexibility is to do bow push-ups. And if you go to Season 1, Episode 1 in Teaching Orchestra, I have a demonstration video on bow push-ups, and I think that, especially for this marcato style, it's going to be really important for the students to have that flexibility in the right hand. It's really going to help them out here. In fact, in the teaching companion, I always start off with finger patterns because, tone and intonation come before anything else. But then the very first bow technique that I have is going to be bow push-ups. And I have them do it with a pencil first and then transition to the bow. And it's really going to make everything easier in this piece of music if the students have that technique. In the next video, I'm going to talk more about style. And so I'm not going to go over a lot of the marcato bowing stuff that I have here in the teaching companion. So I'm going to skip straight to the part where we approach the whole notes. So the students are going to have to learn the marcato style first. If they don't have that down, they're really going to struggle with the whole notes. So make sure you watch the next video too. But I just want to talk about the approach in this video. So as we approach the whole note, we have to know where to start in the bow because we need enough bow to use for the whole note. So I recommend that we start in the middle of the bow for the very first quarter note and try to keep it there. Now, on the very last eighth note, before the whole note, we can use a little bit more up bow if we need a little bit more room. But you should be able to play that whole note from the beginning, particularly if you lift on beat 4. Now, I think that even though the first violins don't have a lift indicated in measure 4, I think they should lift anyway because you're going to have to get back to the middle somehow. And students may not be good at traveling back to the middle, especially with this marcato style in place. They're trying to use little bows, and it probably is best just to have them lift back to the middle, just like the violas are going to do anyway, and then all of that stuff is going to match. Also, if they're lifting, it's going to give these eighth notes and the low strings a chance to come out too, so I think that's probably a good strategy. Now, intensity is indicated at quarter note equals 144 vigorously. Okay, that does not mean that you start all of these exercises at quarter note equals 144. You don't go any faster than how the students can play their technique accurately. So in this case, you might want to go half tempo. You might want to slow down quite a bit so that you can make sure that they're going back to the middle of the bow. You can make sure that they're using little bows on the eighth notes and short bows on the quarter notes. Another thing that I recommend is that students are practicing long bows. Again, in Season 1, Episode 1, I have a demonstration video on 12-count long bows, and there are some strategies on how to activate the string so that they get the most out of their bow. If they can do a 12-count long bow, at quarter note equals 100, they should be able to play 3 counts out of the 4 of the whole note, because remember, we're going to lift on beat 4 and then get back to the middle. If they can do 12, they should be able to reduce that to 3 and still sound really good. Another strategy with that is they can play a little closer to the bridge, and that's going to help them get more depth to their sound when they add weight. So once they master this technique, I like to start here at 64. And the reason why I like to start here is because we get this twice in a row, and it's a good litmus test to see if the students really know the technique. If they can't play this, then go back and work on the technique in the teaching companion. Now, unfortunately, well, or fortunately for the listener, because it makes it more interesting, the cellos and basses have a completely independent line from the upper strings. So that's another advantage to the teaching companion, is that everybody's doing the same thing, and you don't have people falling asleep while you're just working with the upper strings, and then the upper strings aren't going to sleep when you're working with the lower strings. Everybody's practicing at the same time, everybody's getting the technique. And when you go here, the cellos and basses should have already practiced the grip wiggle technique, and the upper strings should have practiced the approaching the long notes technique. After 64, I like to go to measure 26. I guess 25 and 26, because 26 uses a half note instead of a whole note. It's shorter note value, but it also has this crescendo, and I like to have the students crescendo to make sure that they continue the sound. In the teaching companion, I have an exercise where they have to crescendo on the whole note, and that just lets them utilize their weight more efficiently. You definitely don't want the sound to decay on the whole notes. You want them to be full and strong. When the students retake, a lot of times in class when we practice retakes, we're practicing retaking to the frog, like we do a long down bow or something, and then we retake to the frog. This is the opposite in intensity. What we're doing is we're playing to the frog, and then we're retaking to the middle and doing another down bow. So it could be counter to what they've been practicing in class out of their method books and so forth when they think, what is a retake? So make sure that every time they retake to the middle. I have my students write middle in their music, because I don't want there to be any second guessing or any question. Like, I want them to write it down so that they have a reminder to do it every time. And that way we don't develop bad habits that we're going to have to fix later. If we can't figure out how to approach these whole notes, we're going to end up with a lot of rushing. We're going to end up with bad phrasing, and we're not going to get the intensity of this piece to come out. It's not going to sound as intense. So practice left hand alone, make sure they understand the bow distribution, do it slowly, practice your long bows, and this piece is going to be much easier to teach once they have those fundamentals in place. And they're going to have a lot more fun playing because there's more that they can do with it. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about style. How do we master that marcato style, and what are some of the other stylistic elements? How do we keep our marcato style in the piano sections? Hope you stick around for the next one. We'll see you next time.